Hey everyone, Firegrass here, and today we're going to be talking about a terrible new div card added to the game called Judging Voices. When this item was originally previewed this morning, I wasn't actually intending on making a video about it, but I got thinking about how sort of terrible it is and how bad some of the implications of it are, so I decided I would, make a video talking about that. The item quite simply is named Judging Voices, and it grants a Forbidden Shaco. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the items Forbidden Shaco and Replica Forbidden Shaco have been condensed into the same item. So as you can see here, now what Forbidden Shaco does is what Replica Forbidden Shaco used to do, which is what you see on your screen here, where it's going to basically roll a helm, and the only properties of the helm are that it grants 2 free gems, basically. So you have another 6 link in your helm, but the important thing here is that one of the gems can roll up to level 35. Now, this is really big for gems that add flat added damage, so things like Ice Bite support, they scale insanely. If you have a level 35 Ice Bite support on this helm, it is worth an insane amount of money. In the past, depending on the time of the league, I've seen them sell for, upwards of a mirror. They're in some cases like a really best in slot one that is high in demand. I have seen in one case sell for almost 2 mirrors. Now, you can roll these with divines. If you just hit them with divines, and it randomizes both the gem types and the levels. And as you can see here, the levels have also ranges as well, so you can get like level 1 to 10 on your first gem and level 25 to 35 on your second gem. So even if you hit a best in slot combination of gems, you could still get really terrible levels that basically make the item worthless, right? A level 25 Ice Bite isn't really worth giving up a helm slot for. A lot of good stats go on the helm, and you're giving up like not only like double influence to helm stats, but you're also potentially giving up a helm enchant. So if you want an enchant on this helm, you're going to have to give it to a lab farmer or farm lab yourself for the one you want. This could be expensive, and it can be time consuming depending on, how available that service is. But anyway, let's get into talking about why this div card is terrible. Many of you guys are probably aware that content creators aren't a big fan of div cards, especially the ones that drop boss loot, because it devalues the boss loot, right? The increased availability of those items in the economy lowers the value of that type of boss loot, so like Starforge, Savior, etc. And in almost every case, that the div card that corresponds to the boss loot doesn't also drop from the same boss. So basically, running that boss stops being worth doing, very quickly in a league, usually after the first week, because this div card is just freely available to the player base. And what makes it worse is the availability of stacked decks. Stacked decks just generate a lot of these items, and then the boss loot is worth nothing. Last league, I target farmed over 10,000 div cards in 3 days, for example, and you can imagine what that does to the economy. Like, how I pulled, I think, enough Starforge cards to make a full Starforge. That is kind of crazy when you think about it. There were actually a lot of boss items that I was able to make full sets of by the time I was done. That sort of thing just shouldn't exist in the game, and that's just one person, right? Like, imagine if everyone did what I did, we would all own Starforges, you'd never have to run the corresponding boss fight for it, anymore, and I think that's just terrible, and that relates to a lot of what we're going to talk about here. Now, the first problem is that the Forbidden Shaco's cost mostly comes from rolling it with divines. So I can't sit here and tell you that there's a silver lining with this div card going into the game, that casual players are suddenly going to be able to access the Forbidden Shaco and get, level 35 Ice Bites, because that's just not going to happen. Those casual players that turned in the div card sets are then still going to have to buy tons of divines in order to hit what they want, right? Like, I think about 60 to 80% of the cost of this item, of getting a Forbidden Shaco with the rolls you want, comes from the Divine Orbs, not actually the Forbidden Shacos. Now, as you saw in the previous slide, Forbidden Shaco at the moment costs 20x. That's one that isn't rolled, right? So you pay 20x, and then you can start rolling with Divine Orbs on it, right? Now, this devalues the Yoshabi fight even further, as the Forbidden Shaco is now going to cost less. Obviously, it's not going to cost 20x next league when there's a div card that's popping out of stacked decks, increasing the supply of this item. You may see it drop down to about 10x. Now, this is in turn going to devalue the Sacred Blossom. Sacred Blossom is not going to be worth much anymore when it no longer has a 20x drop. It has only, say, a 10x drop. This will decrease the value of harvest farming, and this will in turn mean that people aren't using, like Watchstones to target farm harvest anymore, which in turn will further reduce the Sacred Blossom amount, etc. Like, it's going to have a lot of negative impacts for the average player. And then you now have a situation where the new div card is buffing the stack deck pool. So presumably, when you pull this item out of a stack deck, it's going to be worth probably like 1x. I don't know, like maybe more, maybe a little less. It really depends on where things stabilize. This is going to further increase the demand for stack decks, because it's basically another, very high value stack deck div card being added to the stack deck pool. And this means that the price of stacked decks are going to stabilize a little higher in bulk, maybe 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5C each, right, in bulk. This will increase the demand for stacked decks, and that will increase the amount of people farming stacked decks. As I mentioned last league, I farmed 10,000 on my own. There's probably going to be a few more people out there that decide to farm 10,000 on their own, by target farming them using certain mechanics, right? And this is going to lead to a higher supply of all boss uniques, because you can't just target farm this new card. You are target farming stacked decks, and that's just going to generate tons of boss loot, right? And so suddenly boss farming is going to get devalued very fast. Obviously, this one card isn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It's just going to increase a problem that already exists, right? It's going to further contribute and further exacerbate a problem that has existed for a few leagues, and it's just going to continue to get worse. Now, the higher supply of Forbidden Shaco is also going to result in significantly increased demand of Divine Orbs. This is also a problem, right? So I think a lot of the Divine Orb price at the moment is driven by people rolling Timeless Jewels and people rolling Forbidden Shaco. And this is just going to get worse. If you're putting twice as many Forbidden Shacos in the hands of players, that's twice as many people that want, like hundreds, thousands of Divine Orbs in order to roll them to hit what they want, especially since getting a good one, you're still going to be able to cash out a best-in-slot Forbidden Shaco for the cost of a mirror or 2 mirrors or whatever. And that's because, basically, that just having a Forbidden Shaco doesn't mean anything, right? I've never heard of someone dropping a Forbidden Shaco and then having ideal rolls on it already. You have to use Divine Orbs for it. So the increased supply isn't going to increase the amount of best in slot ones or the amount of high value ones. All it's going to do is increase the demand for Divine Orbs. Divine Orbs are going to basically be depleted from the economy a lot faster, and that means they're going to be worth a lot more money. And that's bad for the average casual player, right? If you're an average casual player and you just want a few Divine Orbs to, divine up some items to fix up some bad rolls in your items, suddenly you're paying an X where previously you may have had to pay a third, half an X or a third of an X for a certain amount of Divine Orbs. I think that's just terrible. I really want to stress here that I'm not trying to shit on the person who made this Div Card. Obviously someone paid a good amount of money to have this commissioned, and I'm happy for that person. I'm not angry with them at all. I'm not angry with GGG or anything. I'm not saying GGG should have stopped this card from being made. There's nothing wrong with this card having been made. I'm just saying that from a softcore trade perspective, this card is probably going to have a negative influence on the average casual player overall. And, that's okay. We can't always have wins. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, objectively, I have to sort of give this a 1 out of 5. There aren't any upsides. There are lots of downsides to this. And I'm struggling to even think about something good to say about this item being put into the game. I can't even tell you, as I mentioned, that, now casual players are going to get to play with this cool item. And it is a cool item, right? I see where the person who commissioned this was coming from, but as a casual player, you're still not going to use this item. Most of the cost associated with this item is coming from Divine Orbs, and Divine Orbs are going to cost more money since there's going to be more demand for them. So, if anything, this actually makes it kind of harder for an average player to use. And yeah, I think it just contributes to Div Card bloat. There's not much more to say about that. I filter most Div Cards out nowadays. I just can't be bothered dealing with them. They are kind of a pain in the ass for me. And I know a lot of other people feel that way. There were just hundreds and hundreds of Div Cards in the game, and they're all kind of samey, and I really don't care about the Div Card system. Div Card's the one thing that if GGG removed from the game, I really couldn't care less. I would even be happy because it's hundreds of items I no longer have to think about. But that's probably just me. Yeah, 1 out of 5, not really a fan of this at all, and it was so bad that I felt that even though it was a Div Card, it needed a video to talk about how bad it was. I didn't make videos about the other Div Cards because I didn't think they were that important. I didn't think they were going to have that much of an influence on the economy or anything. But I feel like this will. I feel like this one just isn't a good one. If you enjoyed losing 9 minutes of your life to me ranting about why a Div Card is bad for the game, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next reveal. Providing the reveal isn't a Div Card, I don't really like reviewing Div Cards, honestly.